All right. Let us jump in here. Don't let me forget. I've got something around my neck, and I want to explain it to you in a minute. It's very small, and you too could look this good if you want. You can make your own. So I want to, if I forget to mention that at the end, I shouldn't. It's in my notes, but you know how I am. Welcome if you're online watching, from home, or from wherever you are. Today we're going to start a new series, and as you can see, we're going to dare to dream small. I don't want anyone dreaming big today. We're dreaming small. We're dreaming small. Sacred smallness. Let's jump into Psalm 131, a psalm of David, a song of David, a poem David wrote. Let this settle into your heart. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. But I have calmed and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. There's a story of a professional bodybuilder, huge Instagram following, famous for his physique. And he said in an interview, when I look in the mirror, I never see someone big enough. Think about that. This man's entire life has been devoted to fitness, to calibrating and refining his body. He's got very little body fat. He's ripped. He is probably the fittest person, the top 0.5% of people in the world. And he looks in the mirror dissatisfied. He looks in the mirror like there's something more to improve. There's something that's beyond his reach. And he feels small. He feels weak. He feels like not enough. Every new goal reached only reveals another flaw to fix, another muscle to perfect. His body was enormous, but his soul is shrinking. It's crushed by the weight of an ideal he can never reach. Can you feel that a little bit? Maybe not in bodybuilding. Some of you guys, But in other areas of your life, as a parent, as a partner, in your career, as a friend, as a human, as a Christian, that the ideal, this ideal that's out there, constantly stands in judgment of who you are and what you have not yet achieved. No matter how much progress, you're crushed by this ideal that becomes your master. And we live in a world that teaches us to lift our eyes up beyond our abilities, to dream big. Right? We are constantly called to be great, to be the best, to be excellent, to be the few, the proud, the brave, right? Always the goal of our life is to be the few that make it and become the apex of the human possibility, right? And then every single life is measured against that. And if you don't make it to be LeBron James in life, right, or in basketball or in marriage or whatever, then you are a failure, and you look back on your life and feel like, I wasted my life. Even we do this in the church, right? There's William Carey, one of the most famous and kind of forerunners of the modern mission movement back in the early 19th century. He said, expect great things from God, do great things for God. Expect great things from God, do great things for God. I remember I internalized this as a kind of a very sincere young person, and as a continued, hopefully a sincere older person. I have internalized this. I want to expect great things to God. I want to do great things for God. And what I find myself is that greatness is always just beyond me, right? And it's discouraging. I'm just going to be real with you. It's really discouraging to feel like, well, I'm not as great as I should be. I haven't spent as much time as I should have. I haven't been as loving as I could be, because there's this ideal that isn't real. And so the invitation today from David, from this psalm, from Scripture, is to embrace a sacred smallness. To embrace the sacred smallness of our life. Are you okay with being small? Are you okay with being ordinary? We're invited to embrace sacred smallness and to honor the beautiful limitations of being human. Right? You realize as a human being you're limited, right? We have to eat pretty regularly or we die. We have to drink, we have to sleep. We are limited human beings. We need to embrace the limitations. So Eugene Peterson said of this Psalm 131, he says, it's a quiet act of resistance against our culture of ambition and anxiety. So this psalm is for those of us who are tired of trying to be more than human, right? It's a humble, restful recognition that we are creatures, not gods. So let's talk about the beauty and significance of a small life. Small lives lived in small cities, in small neighborhoods of small influence. First, the first verse. Oh Lord, my heart is not lifted up. This is about embracing the smallness of your life. It's about daring to dream small. Daring to dream small. Honoring the sacred limitations of your humanity. Oh Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great or too marvelous for me. So he begins with this confession of limits. There's a limitedness to his life, and it's good that he remains within the limits of his humanity. He is learning to honor the boundaries of what it means to be human, not humid, human. And so, as I said before, we are limited, right? Can anyone fly here without the assistance of an airplane, right? Can anyone go multiple days without drinking water? Can anyone hold space for relationship, to love fully like hundreds and hundreds of people? Like, we're limited. Like, sociologically, I think we're designed to have like no more than like 15 or 20 really close relationships. And yet, we're just pushed beyond that. And we feel this pressure to be everyone to everything, to go beyond that. We are limited. If you think about it, and we're going to talk about this in the coming weeks, but even biblical heroes live pretty small lives. What did Abraham ever do? Dude, like, Abraham, what did he actually do? He traveled. Yeah, God said move and walk through the desert, and he did. So that was good. I mean, he obeyed God. He almost killed his son, right? And he cheated on his wife, or he made like a really convincing argument that he should go for this younger girl to populate the earth, right? Or like to kind of see God's blessing. So he did that. He kind of messed up. He lied a lot to like powerful people. Like what did he do? Pretty small life. I mean, even Jesus' life was pretty small. Like, think about it. What do we know about him before he's 30 years old? One time his parents forgot him. And he was just a woodmaker, or carpenter, stone mason, whatever scholars think. Worked with his hands. And how long did he live on earth? I mean, he's alive still. We believe he's alive. He's resurrected from the dead. But, I mean, 90% of his life was lived in obscurity. Do we know anything about him except for the 3 years? And he got crucified with no one around, no friends. Pretty small life. So the encouragement here is to live within our limits. But to live within our limits is not to shrink. It's to become whole. I want you to hear that. It's not to shrink, but it's to become whole. It's to allow ourselves to swell with all that we were meant to contain. To not shrink back, but to grow. But to grow within the limits. So here is a Dietrich Bonhoeffer, awesome guy, lived in Nazi Germany, was part of the resistance to Hitler, also did some cool stuff, also got killed in his mid-30s for his role in resisting Hitler. But he wrote a little book on community, Christian community, and he said, those who love their dream of community more than the community itself become destroyers of that community. I'm going to read a little bit more here. But you can substitute community for whatever you have an ideal of. A marriage, your parenting, what life with children would be like, what adoption would be like, what a career owning your own business would be like, what getting your PhD would be like, whatever it is. Fill it in the blank. Let's read the next quote here. This is still Bonhoeffer. The man who fashions a visionary ideal of community, marriage, career, demands that it be realized by God, by others, and by himself. He enters the community of Christians or his marriage or his relationship with his children with his demands, sets up his own law, and judges the brothers or his children or his spouse or his co-workers, and judges God himself accordingly. He acts as if he is the creator of the Christian community, as if his dreams binds men together. When things do not go his way, and this is the key, he calls the effort a failure. And then, this is the tragic thing, he becomes first an accuser of his brethren. It's your fault that the ideal is not being reached. It's your fault that our marriage isn't the way. It's my kids' fault that I'm not a good parent. Like we project, right? We blame others. Then we become an accuser of God. God's fault. Why isn't God making this happen? Why isn't God realizing my dream of my life? And finally, it ends with being an accuser of ourselves, of despair, of being crushed by the weight. And I'll tell you, I end up in that spot quite a bit. After a sermon I preach and I start judging it, and ultimately, man, it ends up always, you suck, you should be better, you should do better, you should be better, you should know more, you should be more smooth, or whatever. It becomes to be an accuser of yourself because you're ideal. So here's the deal. The ideal becomes a tyrant. The gap between the ideal and the real always stands in judgment of your life. Does that make sense? The gap between what you think should be and what is stands as an accuser of you, ultimately crushing you, ultimately leading to judgment of others, judgment of God, and ultimately bitterness and self-hatred. And what this often leads to is, until we give up in hopelessness, we try to make this dream come a reality. We control people, we manipulate people, we overpower people, we try to make people or our spouse or our kids fulfill our ideal. And what it crushes our relationships, right? It crushes our families. It crushes our communities. It crushes our places of work. And so we become like a hamster on a wheel, or a fool trying to get to the end of a rainbow, right? We're just running as hard as we can, but it's just always beyond our reach until we're exhausted. So David, in this psalm, is inviting us into another way. The way of humility, the way of sacred smallness, the way of quiet trust and quiet life as limited human beings. he says in the next verse, verse 2, but I have calmed and quieted my soul. So I don't look beyond myself. What do? I have calmed and quieted my soul. Now, what if you have calmed and quieted yourself? What does that assume? If you needed to be quiet, what were you doing? What do babies do? They're crying, right? Like they're crying. Little babies, before they're weaned, they cry. They cry out. They ask for, they're not sure. A little infant is completely dependent on their parent for care, protection, and provision, right? And so the only thing they know to do is to cry and cry out, and sometimes become inconsolable for a while. Why? Because they haven't learned they can trust the provision of their parents. That's what this whole first phase of life is about. Developing a healthy attachment, a secure attachment, to know that if I cry or if I'm hungry, I'll be fed. If I cry, I'll be comforted. And that gives us a place of security from which we can go into the world and start branching out. That's a secure attachment. So what he's describing here is, I was an infant. I wasn't sure that God would protect me. I was whining, complaining, and reaching, but I learned to be content. I learned to trust the Father, the Mother God here, who would provide. And so he's like a weaned child. A weaned child is one that has been cared for apart from what that child can give, right? Like a baby cannot give anything back to their parent. A little baby is helpless, and they're not even that cute, to be honest. Let's say they don't even give us beauty back, right? They're kind of ugly and malformed or whatever, and we feed them, and they cry, and they make messes in their diaper, and there's nothing they can give us in return. And that's what God does for us. He loves us apart from our usefulness to him. He loves us apart from our trust of him. He cares for us. And so this psalmist is describing this process where he is learning to trust and to live within his limits, to not grasp and to say, I am safe with God who provides for me. So here's the good news, right? Jesus fulfills this psalm. He becomes the fulfillment of the psalm. He knows this psalm. And he invites us to live it. I love, here's Matthew 11:28. Jesus becomes the fulfillment of this psalm when he offers the same invitation. He says, come to me. Who? All who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Eugene Peterson paraphrases this. It's beautiful. Are you tired? Worn out? Burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me. Work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Does that sound good? Jesus knew Psalm 131 well, and he invites us into its peace. He is the source of the peace of this psalm. So let's talk real quick. Small, when we talk about smallness, we are not talking about being diminished. Again, it's not shrinking, it's swelling, right? It's being filled, not shrinking. But small does not mean insignificant. The best things come in small packages, right? You've heard this before, right? A diamond, right, is pretty valuable, very small. The value of your life is not measured by the space you take up. The value of your life is not based on the number of eyes that are on you, that see you, or the number of ears that hear your name. The value of your life is not by the space you take up, but rather by the depth of love you embody. the depth of love you allow to fill who you are. Everything, overexpansion leads to the death of everything, right? Like if a plant overgrows, extends too far, it needs to be pruned back, right? In order to bear fruit. It has to be contained within itself in order to grow healthy and to be fruitful. Businesses, same thing, right? We see businesses, I've actually talking to all the marijuana places that have popped up, and there's like millions of them, oversaturated, right? They've overexpanded. Now they're all shutting down, right? There's an overextension. A healthy business needs to grow at pace, grow within its limits, can't overexpand or it dies. The same is true of the human heart, the human soul, the human being. A soul that refuses its limitations will burn out, will die. So the power of your life, and I think we have a slide. Yeah, there we go. The power of your life lies not in your reach, but in your depth, right? Does that make sense? It's not in the expansion of your life, but in its containment and what we're containing, the love of God. So we tend to what God has given us. We cultivate the ground that is your little corner of the world. And you're faithful there. And you put roots there. Healthy roots, right, lead to healthy fruit. And so the growth comes, the fruitfulness comes through this contentment and care, not from striving and control. So Peterson says this: Christian maturity begins when we embrace our ordinariness. Can we just accept that we're ordinary? Thank you. Yes. It feels good it's okay to be ordinary, isn't it? Man. And I keep on thinking of LeBron James, right? He's extraordinary. But is he really? I mean, he plays basketball. That's great. He's awesome. But like, what is that of the measure of anyone's life? Like, come on. That's great. He's famous. But is he actually not? I mean, I'm sure I think he has to go to the bathroom and he has to eat. And he also is married and probably has fights with his wife, and he probably feels bad about how he raises his kids and he's not there enough. Like, LeBron James is an ordinary dude living an ordinary life. And people remember him for a little bit, longer than any of us will be remembered. But not for very much long in the span of history. Like, what excellent athlete from the year 300 AD do you know? You know? How about the 1800s? Probably not. All right, so here's the turn, verse 3. We embrace our ordinariness. We have this kind of humility, this smallness. We don't lift our eyes beyond what our heart is not lifted too high. But here's the contrast a little bit. The solution here is not to like go inward and just kind of be downcast and be small and shrink and feel like you're just worthless and say, oh no, I'm nothing, I'm ordinary, I'm nothing. No, it's actually to like lift up your eyes higher than yourself. Higher, like to lift your eyes beyond yourself and hope in the Lord. And that's where the fullness of our smallness begins to have significance and weight and beauty. So we begin with, I have not lifted my eyes too high. But at the end, it's almost like he's saying, actually, we haven't lifted our eyes high enough. Right? We haven't lifted them high enough. Like, fix your eyes on Jesus, on God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Oh, Israel, hope in the Lord. Not in your ability to make a difference, not in your ability to be great, not in your ability to be extraordinary and supernatural and do great things for a great God. You look and you fix your eyes on the greatness of God, and you allow the greatness of God to fill your small corner of the world, to embrace your limits, to be rooted in God's limitless love. So we can embrace our limits. And now we're free to look beyond ourselves to the limitless one. And we can open ourselves up fully to the limitless love of God. All right? So don't hear me say here that like we're supposed to like feel like filthy wretches, right? Or small little worms that are insignificant and don't matter and will be forgotten in the pages of history. No, we are remembered by the creator of the universe. We're known and seen, and he has given us a role to play. And here is the cool part about this. All right? Balloons. You guys know about balloons? All right, there's some balloons. Look at these balloons. All different shapes, sizes, colors, right? A balloon can only really fulfill its purpose if it allows itself to be filled. So it can't be without air, right? The balloon is not living its intended purpose if it's not filled. But also it has to be filled within its limits, right? What happens to a balloon that is overfilled, right? It pops and it scares everyone, especially with people with sensory issues. Done that here before. And so on baptism Sundays, everyone who's just sensitive bolts. I don't think they've been back, actually. That's too bad. Okay, so balloons, man, they've got to stay within their limits to fulfill their purpose. Now, every balloon alone is not very impressive, right? Just a balloon filled with helium. It's kind of fun to have one balloon. But where you find like all the fun, right? And where you feel like, man, this is awesome, is look at this whole bouquet of balloons, right? When each balloon is joined to the full bouquet of balloons, there's a beautiful like fun vibe that develops here. And the beauty of the whole is greater than any of the sum of its parts. Does that make sense? Like the beauty of the whole becomes like this bigger picture than any one added together could be. So the same is true of our life, right? The significance and value of our life is not found in one balloon being great in and of itself, right? Like one balloon trying to be great will just pop. But each balloon living within their limits, allowing themselves to be filled, can be joined to the greater whole. And this is what God is building, right? A beautiful bouquet of balloons. Another example would be a building, and each of us is a brick, right? Every brick is necessary for a building to stand. God is building his kingdom, is building his renewed world, his healed world, one person, one life at a time with each of our contributions. But it's in our smallness, as we embrace our limits, as we are content with the little corner of the world that we inhabit and the gifts that we've been given, that we become a brick or a balloon, right? Added to the beauty of what God is doing. So when we let the limitless love of God fill our limited lives, we become, right, weightless with joy. We rise. We're anchored in hope and lifted in love. Now, maybe this is extending the metaphor too far, I don't know. But a balloon can be filled with just regular air, right? And what kind of balloon is that? It's on the ground, right? It's vulnerable. It's just kicked around. It's down there. It's not part of the bouquet. And so the goal here, there is a way to live in a smallness of our life without being filled with the limitless love of God, right? And so that would be like a false humility or a self-deprecation or a withdrawal from the world. You know what? I can't make a difference, so I'm just going to live in the corner by myself, overwhelmed by everything, and just live a quiet life. But no, we're called to live lives filled with the love of God, filled with the Spirit, filled to capacity, right? That we would play our part in the beautiful story that God is creating. It reminds me of this. I think it's Ignatius said, the glory of God is a human being fully alive. The glory of God is a human being fully alive. The glory of God is you, your small little life, filled with the limitless love of God. And that's your purpose. So, here's the takeaway, right? Maturity Eugene Peterson said, is not the acquisition of power, but the acceptance of limitation. Psalm 131 calls us to grow down, to become small enough to rest in God's arm. And that's where we find our peace. That's where we find hope. That's where we find our true selves. And that's where we find our place in the huge story, the great story that God is telling in the world. So I just want to ask you this, and I'll invite Stephen to come up and we'll sing our last song. But are you tired and angry and sad and bitter? And could it be that that it's the result of this ideal that other people aren't helping you fulfill, or that God's not helping you fulfill? Could it be that there are some limits that you need to embrace? Could it be that there's a reorientation that God is inviting you into to embrace the sacred smallness of your life and open that small life up to the huge, limitless love of Jesus? What area of your life is that? Is there an ideal of marriage, or an ideal of career, or an ideal of friendship, or an ideal of the Christian life that you have allowed to stand in judgment rather than living in the real and being with Jesus in that? Reflect on that as we sing this song. Hit the lights. And then don't let me forget, at the end, I'm going to talk about the mustard seeds.